that ass back like a boom, 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 boom.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and you're very welcome to the latest edition of DriveThru Sports Weekly. It may actually be slightly more than a week since I recorded the last issue, but in the current climate with the world continuing to be turned upside down, I think just to get anything recorded at all is a bit of an achievement in itself. Beginning this week with news of athletics, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who was shocked and deeply saddened the other day to learn of the passing of a very well-known and respected figure within the Irish athletics community in Jerry Kiernan. Now, I would be the first to admit that as regards his actual own career, or that I wouldn't actually know a whole lot about Jerry's achievements or that, because I would suspect that he was plying his trade slightly before my time, as they say. But I do know that he was very much part of RTE's coverage of major athletics events such as European Championships, World Championships, and of course the Olympics being the main one. And they certainly won't be the same without him having passed away. Whenever we have another Olympics or a big event in athletics, it surely won't be the same not having his distinctive mop of hair on standby to impart his undoubted wisdom about his area of expertise. I was only thinking during the week about Jimmy McGee, and whenever there may be another Olympics or World Championships or whatever, what it would be like not having Jimmy in the commentary box. But Jerry Kiernan, now having passed away, is another man who would have been very much part of my sports viewing life when I was growing up, and indeed up till most recently. So I've no doubt the athletic fraternity far and wide will be very much in mourning at the moment, and I'm sure I speak for all sports fans, and particularly athletics fans, when I extend deepest sympathy to all concerned with Jerry's passing. Moving on now to soccer, and as I just began to record, Brentford have just taken the lead against Arsenal in the third round of the FA Cup, and in actual fact seem to be very much on top. Did I say Brentford? I did say Brentford rather ridiculously. It is of course Southampton. I recognised the red and white alright, but I didn't realise it was Southampton. I was just going to say there that Southampton, well, I suppose they, to be fair to them, have been one of the stories of the season, maybe in an understated, under the radar sort of way, in that they continued to make slow and steady progress under Ralph Hasenhüttl, and as regards major targets or where they could end up by season's end, I'm not sure, and I'm sure they're not even thinking along those lines, but they certainly are one of the most improved sides in English football, and indeed I'm just keeping one eye on the game here as I'm talking to you, and they should actually be two, if not three in front already, and the game is only 28 minutes on, so there's no doubt that the tie of the round is undoubtedly the clash tomorrow, Sunday evening, of Manchester United and Liverpool, which is of course a repeat of their meeting of last Sunday in the Premiership. Now, sport is an amazing thing, and form and people's judgment and people's opinions can change in a very fickle manner, because not all that long ago it appeared that Liverpool were about to completely run away with the Premiership season yet again, and naturally enough, on the back of that, they were a prohibitively short price favourite with the bookies, and for once one couldn't disagree with the bookies for the simple reason that there was no reason to think that Jurgen Klopp's team wouldn't go on and steamroll the competition in a similar manner to what they did last season. Now, there's no doubting that there has been there has been a diversion of their positioning in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I suppose you'd say. They certainly don't have the infallible, unbeatable look about them that they had, say, prior to Christmas, or even at the start of the Christmas period. Now maybe that is not to detract from what has been an obvious and incremental and perhaps slightly understated improvement by Manchester United on their part as well. But as good and as absolutely outstanding as Liverpool undoubtedly were last season, the loss of Virgil van Dijk at the back is definitely beginning to tell in a very discernible way now, and as well as that, it can't be just my impression that all does not seem entirely well with Mo Salah now, whether it's just a confidence thing or whether there's fallout there with himself and Klopp, or whether there's something else at play that hasn't come out yet. The one thing that is beyond dispute is that he is absolutely not the potent force that he had been heretofore, and as a consequence of that, neither are the Liverpool team collectively, because, as I just said there, the loss of Van Dijk at the back is incalculable, as it would be to any team, it has to be said, not just Liverpool. With Salah off colour, which he undoubtedly has been, with Salah off colour, the diminishment in efficiency displayed by Bobby Firmino in front of goal is beginning to tell as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not for a second implying that they have become a bad team overnight, and as I wrote earlier in the week there, I think the bookies' odds are being extremely generous on on the Liverpool front, for the simple reason that to push them out to 130, I think, when essentially they've only lost one game recently, is a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, to say the least. But as I heard or I read somewhere last night, at an ungodly hour of the morning, when most normal people are undoubtedly asleep, I think it was Paul Merson who said that it's now about how Liverpool react to the current slump, if you want to call it that they're in the midst of, that if they can rebound out of it and put themselves back into the title picture, it really will signpost them as one of the truly great teams of more recent years. But the other side of that is that they most definitely will have to buck themselves up ever so slightly, because whatever has caused it, it gives me great pleasure to say that United have improved beyond all recognition in recent weeks, and as well as that, Manchester City. Now, I honestly didn't think that Manchester City had diminished to any great degree at all, but there seems to be a groundswell of opinion that they had to some point anyway. But if they had, they've certainly played themselves out of it again, and one can totally understand why Paddy Power currently have them at 2-1 on the last odds I've seen to win the league. But I'm actually not inclined to think that it may turn out as straightforward as that. But because, as well as United having made marked progress over recent weeks and months, due largely, I am pleasantly surprised to say, to the reality of Paul Pogba actually bothering his arse to put in a bit of work and repay some of the 89 point whatever million was paid for him. There's no doubt, look, the man is one of, and we've all come across plenty of them in our lives. The man is an enigmatic genius. There's absolutely no doubting his football ability, but one wonders at times where exactly his head does be. But lately he has been applying himself properly, and it can hardly be coincidence that United are where they are at a commensurate time. Do I think they're good enough to win the league? Being honest about it, no, I don't. I would still be inclined to think that it's City's to lose, but I, at this point, think from a spectator's point of view, the enjoyment in it will be seeing what is an unmerciful battle this year for the top four turns out, because, as I said, we have to see, have Liverpool regressed, or is it just a mini slump, if you want to call it that. Are United as good as what they're currently looking? My gut is saying no, but I hope I'm wrong. Then you have Arsenal, who have definitely, this cup match notwithstanding, they've definitely played themselves out of their slump from a league point of view, and the same can of course be said for Spurs, who, considering Mr. Mourinho as their manager, have been tipping along quite quietly under the radar and saying very little to anybody, and I suppose to a certain extent the same could be said and can be said of Leicester City, who again maybe don't attract the attention they merit and indeed deserve, but they are still very much in the picture for, well, perhaps not the title, although they could be with the way this season is going, but they certainly would look nailed on for a top four finish, whereas in comparison, one wonders what's going to happen next at Chelsea. The one thing I do know is that it's surely the case that if Frank Lampard wasn't Frank Lampard, he would now be out of a job, if not long ago. So, as somebody said to me over the weekend, it'll just be a matter of waiting and seeing what happens in the cup games over the weekend. But it's certainly considerably more enjoyable than previous Premiership seasons, where the outcome was about as predictable as the Scottish Premiership or La Liga in more recent years, and that it only concerned, and I suppose we can throw the All-Ireland Senior Championship in Gaelic football in here as well. It only concerned one team or maybe two at most, whereas this year there actually seems to be a genuine wide open contest for the title, which makes great from a viewing perspective. Just to finish up on soccer for the time being, and to go to domestic soccer, if we want to call it that, just for a very brief period. Last week you would have seen an article in which I highlighted the progress of the Keeley brothers from Dunboyne. Connor, who has recently signed a contract with Irish League side Ballymena United, and his younger brother Josh, who has been promoted, if that's the right word, into the St. Patrick's Athletic senior squad for the coming season. Now, in this seat, it was hoped that there would be another local connection to St. Patrick's Athletic, not only for this season but for a good while to come. But even at underage level, it is transfer window time in soccer, and with that, just to say that the Trim youngster Ian Byrne did complete his move from the Inchicore club to Talca Park earlier this week, where he will actually be joined by, or where he will join, I suppose you would say, a number of former Belvedere Football Club teammates who are already with Shelburne. So no doubt we will be following his progress with special interest in these quarters. Now, I will say, and I will make no secret of the fact that he is a very talented young sportsman and could very easily have excelled at any particular code he chose to throw his hat at. I personally would have rather seen him stay at the hurling, which I will always be convinced underneath it all is actually his first love, because I definitely think that Trim definitely have a future hurling star, and Meath as well, if he was stick with the Clash of the Ash. But look, we wish him well, and my gut instinct would be that he can go a particularly good distance into the higher echelons of the game, if one wants to put it that way. But I suppose the big thing now is, and that this goes obviously for a lot of sports, Nobody's exactly too sure as to whether or when games will take off or restart again. But look, at least that will give us some idea of having something to look forward to in the sporting scene. Now, I know I wrote fairly extensively during the week about things in other facets of life that I've been trying to do to keep the show on the road, but if we just had some idea of when there was some bit of sport going to be back, watchable with any little degree of certainty at all, it would be a major bonus for numerous reasons, many of which I'm sure I don't have to elaborate on again here. I think I've been very open and honest about how the COVID-19 and everything related to it has knocked me back over the recent months. Now, again, let me state that I know I'm not on my own in that regard, and I know there are others infinitely worse affected by it, but as I said in a piece I published yesterday, I think COVID-19 is one of these things that everyone will have their own story to it and about it, and each of those stories carry as much merit as the next, and they all need and deserve to be told. But look, I suppose for now the most important thing would be to be grateful for the bit of sport that we have going on, and that of course leads me nicely into horse racing. And I suppose the big news which developed in horse racing over the last day or two, and certainly caught me off guard, and I would imagine and expect caught plenty of others off guard as well, was the decision by David Mullins to call time on his riding career at just 24 years of age. Now, I will admit, this is actually a decision which completely baffles me, I have to say, because there's some of us would give the one working arm that we have in order to be in the position that David Mullins found himself, not only in terms of riding the winner of the Grand National at such a young age, but also being related to and attached to the yard of the greatest, in my view, horse trainer there is on the planet, Willie Mullins. And not only that, but to be in a position where he was getting plenty of rides out of his uncle's yard as well. And as anyone that has been anyway even loosely attuned to horse racing for as long as most of us care to remember, know at this stage there is no such thing as a bad ride out of Willie Mullins, and that's why it would be completely baffling, as I say, to see somebody like David retire from the saddle as soon as he has, because you know, especially when you see his younger brother Charlie now is going the other way. He's only starting his career, and you know, it just seems a strange one. But then there seems to be more and more things like that happening. I mean, switching very briefly to Gaelic games for a moment, just to say that it emerged during the week that Paul Mannion has apparently, for the time being at least, called time on his inter-county career with Dublin. Now, this again is a situation where I will honestly never be able to get my head around it, because I mean, if it was a case that he was in a county that had no prospects of winning something, or weren't even showing shoots of promise or something, then you could understand lads getting peeved at putting in, at, you know, with all the effort and dedication and commitment there is required to even compete to whatever degree that happens to be in the case of a given team at inter-county level. But I mean, to see somebody like Mannion walking away at 27 years of age, when a man should be only coming into his prime, really, for inter-county fair, it just, I don't know, it says something to me that I don't like, whether it's in the makeup of the modern sports person, or whether it's a problem that the GAA have to sort of look at on a larger scale and from a different angle. I would be inclined to think that it's actually a combination of the two. Now, what I am about to say to you, yes, is a slight chip on the shoulder, or a well roasted chestnut, or whatever way you want to describe it. I make no apologies for such being the case, but to me it's an anathema to see lads walking away from inter-county GAA at what I would plainly call ridiculously young ages, because, you know, whatever about work commitments, I can slightly understand the thing if it was a thing with work commitments, but you know, I mean, walking away from inter-county fair for any other reason at 27, 28, I see Kyle Coney in Tyrone did the same thing last week or the week before. That, to me, it just doesn't, I can't figure it out, and it doesn't sit well. I mean, at inter-county level, at the top level of GAA, like, you've what? You've about 8 or 10 years at it, you know, that providing, say, a lad has made the breakthrough by 21, 22, which seems to be the going sort of break-in point at the minute. Granted, there have been notable exceptions, and I'm sure there will be again of latecomers who have made considerable impacts in inter-county level. But if you take it that say a lad breaks onto a county senior panel or team at about 21, 22, I mean, being realistic, you've about what, 8 or 10 years to at most that you'll be able to sustainably manage yourself to be in a position to make it a viable proposition to compete at the highest level. So I mean, the way I look at it is, you've the rest of your life to do whatever you want to do. But if there's inter-county action there on a plate in front of you, grasp it for God's sake while it's there and make the best of it while you can. I mean, it's not going to be there forever. And while I have come round to the way of thinking that the onus maybe is on the players to bear in mind what I just sort of said there, but I think there comes a time when the GAA have to get down off their high horses and say, well, look, why are an increasing number of young players, or youngish players even, walking away from our games at a time when really and truly they should only be hitting their collective peaks. Now, I have thought for a long time, and I have yet to be convinced otherwise, that until the GAA swallow their pride and make senior inter-county players professionals and properly reward them for what they do and what they give to it, the old carrot and stick approach of the meagre possibility in a lot of cases of a trophy at the end of a given season after maybe given 9, 10, 11 months of devotion to it. It just won't cut it anymore, and that has been proved, number one, by more and more players either retiring or secondly going out to Australia and places like this to play in the Australian rules football. And I honestly believe, and I know all the hang-ups and cons there are to going down the money route, but I firmly believe at this stage, if you don't at least investigate that side of things, what incentive is there for a lot of good young talent to stay around and stay playing our games? I mean, there you have Paul Mannion and Paddy Andrews, two relatively young men walking away from it. When I would firmly be of the opinion that both had more and plenty more to offer. Now, yes, there is the element with Dublin that they have won all before them, and they do have that buffer cushion of saying, well, there's not a whole lot else we can do in the game. We've done all there is to do, but I know, and I've thought about it long and hard, and I've heard, whether out of coincidence or fate or whatever one wants to call it, I've heard it a lot in recent weeks and months that not from Dublin either, I must say, because there's one thing that Jim Gavin brought in when he took over in charge of Dublin, that they're the most humble, self-depreciating, ordinary bunch of lads, I think, that could be in the position they're in now. I know it could be said, as I say, that they've won all there is to win in the game, and that side of it. But look, you should never get tired of winning, and if you get tired of winning, then you have a problem. But if you're in a position to be winning, and if times are good, grasp them and hold on to them and cherish them for as long as you have, because you'll have in any sport, or I suppose in any walk of life, you'll have an awful lot more bad days than you will good ones. But that's why I could not for the life of me see why anyone would want to opt out of the Dublin setup if they were young enough and still had plenty to offer to justify themselves being in there. But hopefully, both with David Mullins and the in the case of Paul Mannion, hopefully we might see reversals of both in the not too distant future. Now, moving on to rugby, and of course the rugby season is in complete limbo as well at the moment, like everything else. I assume there is a plan to run off the Six Nations Championship at some point, whenever that proposition becomes a reality. But as I'm speaking to you in about 3 hours time, Munster and Leinster will face off in the Pro 14, as it is now called. It will undoubtedly be one of the weirdest meetings between the two, with the venue empty, of course, but judging by the fact that both sides have announced fairly strong looking lineups, or near enough indeed to their top shots, if one wants to call it that, it should still be a lively game. And given that the two old rivals provide the lion's share of the national team presently, I would hope that this evening's encounter, whatever it may stand for, or whenever there might be a follow-up to it, might give a good barometer of where Irish rugby is at going forward, whenever it's in a position to go forward again. But for now, I reckon that'll do us, folks. I may do, well, it's not that I I will either write an article or put together a short bit of video on the aforementioned rugby match, and also when the FA Cup action for the weekend is concluded rather. But for now, thank you so much for watching in. I hope I didn't bore you to death, and that you may have knocked somewhere near the same amount of enjoyment out of watching this as I did in producing it. And as always, before I go, stay tuned to this Boylan Talk Sport YouTube channel. Stay tuned to the site itself, www.boylantalksport.com, and we're on all the social media outlets: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You'll find us on them all. We try to put fresh content up every day if humanly possible. Bit of a challenge at the minute due to a lack of ongoing sport due to a combination of COVID and bad weather, but we'll keep ploughing away as best we can, and I will speak to you all soon again, please God.